The following has been a daily reality for Southern Israelis for the past decade.
We believe the borders of Israel and Palestine should be based on the 1967 lines with mutually agreed swaps.
I believe that any peace agreement between them will require mutually agreed adjustments to the armistice lines of 1949 to reflect current realities.
Conflicts in this world are often broken down into simple terms. Politicians and experts in the Western world endlessly repeat the simple mantra, land for peace, believing that Israel just needs to give up land in order to achieve peace. However, no democracy has had to deal with the magnitude of turmoil that Israel has, especially in the past decade. Left-wing Jewish groups still relentlessly speak of a two-state solution, asking for Israel to give back land in order to prevent a demographic ticking time bomb, while ignoring Israel's security concerns and placing Jewish settlers as obstacles to peace. Can it be that those Jewish settlers who refuse to leave their land are the only obstacles to peace? Or is there more to it? In recent months, scores of bombs have been falling on southern Israel, originating from civilian populations in Gaza. The rockets, combined with violence emanating from the Sinai Peninsula, are examples of how two pockets of land that were once in Israel's possession are now being used as launching sites for deadly terrorist attacks on Israel. Of all the Western democracies, Israel is the only one that has to put up with persistent violence the way it does, with over 12,800 rockets being fired at it from Gaza in the past decade. Can Israel, in any right mind, give up any more territory if the land they submit for peace becomes the breeding area for the next series of attacks? The issue is complex and extends beyond the talks of land and borders, but regardless, we cannot start a discussion of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict without first asking, where do we draw the line?
Seven years ago, Israel withdrew 21 settlements from Gaza. Every single Jew was removed from Gaza.
הכאב שאני חש במעשה הזה, כמוהו כהכרה הנחרצת שעלינו לעשותו.
الحياة الاجتماعية لنعطي نموذجا أننا عندما يرتحل الإسرائيليون.
There's over 1 million Israelis today living under missile threat from Gaza. Hamas controlling the entire Gaza Strip military, the population, and the Strip itself, turning Gaza the first Arab territory in the Middle East being controlled by a recognized international terrorist regime.
The withdrawal from Gaza has resulted in 1,400 rockets being fired towards Israel in 2012 alone. However, this isn't the first time Israel has given up land in the name of peace. In the 1979 peace treaty with Egypt, Israel returned all of the Sinai Peninsula in exchange for recognition and peace.
Israel is the only country in modern history, that ever gave land for peace after winning a war.
In the aftermath of the death of an Israeli construction worker building a border fence between Egypt and Israel, the land for peace solution gains even more complexity. Could Israel just have bought 33 years of quiet? With territorial negotiations now primarily focused on the West Bank settlements, Israeli and Palestinian leaders are stuck trying to come to a resolution on how to achieve peace while still preserving their respective sides' political agenda. Tel Aviv's proximity to the Green Line of the 1967 borders, combined with the fact that settlements such as Ma'ale Adumim, which has 30,000 Jewish residents lying over the Green Line, complicate the situation even further. This has brought to the table a whole new security argument against Israel's surrendering of territory for peace.
So Ma'ale Adumim was built in a very strategic place to keep the way to Jerusalem open. We are the eastern gate to Jerusalem. We are the eastern guard to Jerusalem.
With security of the most important need due to historical lessons, Israel remains steadfast in its determination to protect itself. Israelis continue to move to Judea and Samaria, commonly known as the West Bank, for many reasons, security, ideology, and economic being just a few. Whatever the reason for their moving, these settlers are placed at the center of the conflict by many.
This morning's announcement by the government of Israel approving the construction of 11 housing units in East Jerusalem is counterproductive.
A few hundred homes are not going to change the reality on the ground. The reality and the future of Judea and Samaria will be decided through negotiations. There's going to be much greater issues that have to be dealt with.
I feel concerned as a father, as a husband, as a citizen, as a Jew, that the place where I live and where I called home and could be up on the table.
You don't wake up and go to and feed your family by being proud because Israel gave back some land somewhere. You go up and live a prosperous life because you have a job and there's security for us and for them. And that has to be the fundamental.
With a Hamas state on Israel's western border, Hezbollah to the north in Lebanon, and Iran looming ever more menacingly to the east just beyond an increasingly unstable Jordan, giving up land could place Israel in dire jeopardy.
There's no other country in the world that has to be fighting terrorism on their own borders.
The notion of land for peace has oversimplified this complex issue.
Conflicts, there's always gray areas in conflicts. It's never black and white. Covering the truth, what's been happening, we understand the basic of the conflict and the basic of accurate information, what's going on. We're giving hope to both sides of the region.
Israel is one of the smallest countries in the world, and in order to make peace with the Palestinians, many people are asking Israel to become much smaller still. When we toured Israel and saw the actual land represented by the maps, we were unable to draw a border that would make Palestinians happy and Israelis secure. See, if Israel gives the Palestinians the hilly land it won from Jordan more than 40 years ago, it may lose the ability to defend itself from violence and rocket attacks. Any hostile force sitting on the hills overlooking Israel would be able to attack Israel's cities, highways, and airport with crude, homemade rockets at will. Only 9 kilometers separate the 1967 Green Line from 70% of the population. Would anyone in their right mind give rocket-shooting terrorists control of the hills overlooking our main cities and airport? We have no idea what the solution is. Israel does not want to rule over the Palestinians indefinitely, but we certainly don't want to give up the Jewish democratic nature of the state. But the notion that Israel should just simply give up land for peace is overly simplistic and hardly more palatable than any of the other options.